The silence of deep space shattered without warning. Captain Zara Klex's six-fingered hands froze above the holographic control panel, her translucent Arxian skin momentarily turning a pale shade of terror-induced blue. The quantum sensors of Epsilon 9 monitoring station weren't just registering an anomaly. They were screaming. Technician Rel, a hulking Cretien with 4 eyes and skin like polished granite, leaned forward. "Captain," he called, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the station's reinforced walls. "You need to see this." The main display erupted into a nightmare of impossible data. A vessel had simply appeared. Not emerged from faster-than-light travel. Not dropped out of a quantum tunnel. It was just there, as if someone had torn a hole in the fabric of space and casually pushed a ship through the wound. "Impossible," Zara muttered, her universal translator clicking and whirring as it struggled to process the incoming data streams. The ship defied every known principle of stellar engineering. Its hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating a silhouette that was less a physical object and more an absence of space. Sensor readings flickered and died, only to regenerate with fragments of impossible information. Quantum signatures that shouldn't exist. Energy readings that contradicted basic laws of physics. "No transponder," Morel reported, his additional eyes blinking in rapid succession. "No identification markers. No communication channels. It's like the ship doesn't want to be seen, but doesn't care if we notice it anyway." Zara's training kicked in. 30 years of deep space monitoring hadn't prepared her for this moment. Standard protocol demanded immediate alert to Confederacy Command. Her fingers danced across the communication panel, but something was wrong. The standard quantum communication bands were distorted. "Run a full spectral analysis," she ordered, her voice tight with controlled panic. The ship continued to drift. No thrust signatures, no radiation emissions, nothing that suggested propulsion or life support. It was a ghost, a technological specter that violated everything known about interstellar travel. Technician Ril, a compact Nexian whose biomechanical implants covered half her skull, spoke up. Her voice carried a tremor of scientific excitement. "Captain, the hull composition is unlike anything in our database. It's absorbing electromagnetic radiation across multiple spectrums. Our sensors are basically bouncing off it." A warning klaxon erupted, its crimson light painting the monitoring station in waves of alert. Something was happening to the ship, or rather, something was happening around it. Space itself seemed to ripple. "Quantum entanglement detected," Morel reported, his voice a mix of professional calm and underlying terror. "But that's not possible. The scale, it's planetary. No, systemic." Zara watched as the ship, if it could be called a ship, seemed to fold reality around itself. Sensor ghosts danced at the edges of perception. For a moment, it looked like multiple versions of the same vessel existed simultaneously, overlapping and then collapsing into a single impossible form. "Confederacy Command needs to know," she whispered. But as her communication attempt failed, Zara Klex realized something fundamental had changed. Whatever this vessel was, whoever had sent it, they had just announced their arrival in the most terrifying way possible. They were here, and they didn't care who knew it. The Galactic Confederacy's central command chamber transformed into a crucible of raw panic. Holographic displays flickered with the ghostly image of the unknown vessel, its impossible silhouette burning into the retinas of the most powerful leaders in known space. Ambassador Krelax of the Arxian delegation slammed 4 crystalline appendages onto the conference table. "We cannot wait," he hissed, his translucent body shifting between shades of angry crimson and fearful blue. "Every moment we deliberate is a moment this unknown threat could be preparing to strike." Seated opposite him, the methodical Nexian representative, Diplomat Vorin, remained infuriatingly calm. His biomechanical eye, a marvel of technological integration, swept across the assembled leaders with calculated precision. "Hasty action is the quickest path to extinction," he countered, his voice a perfect blend of logic and warning. The chamber fell silent. Chief Analyst Wren, a veteran of 100 first contact scenarios, rolled out a holographic projection of the initial sensor data. The room gasped. The ship, if it could be called something so mundane, defied every known principle of stellar engineering. Its quantum signature was less a technological reading and more a mathematical impossibility. "Look here," Wren commanded, highlighting impossible data points. Quantum entanglement readings suggested the vessel wasn't just moving through space, it was fundamentally altering the fabric of space-time around it. This isn't just advanced technology. This is something else entirely. A junior communications officer, barely out of her training rotation, couldn't contain herself. "It's like the ship doesn't follow our rules of physics," she blurted out. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, some with anger, some with sudden, terrifying understanding. The Crescian military attaché, General Mrak, activated his personal holographic display. Massive, scarred hands moved with surprising delicacy as he pulled up defensive protocols. "Our sensor nets are useless," he growled. "Whatever this vessel is, it's already penetrated every defensive grid we've ever constructed." Outside the command chamber, panic was spreading across Confederacy space. Communication channels overloaded. Planetary defense systems went into unprecedented alert states. Entire star systems began emergency evacuation protocols. Diplomat Voron's biomechanical eye began to calculate probabilities at a dizzying rate. "The vessel has made no aggressive moves," he noted. "Yet our collective response suggests we're treating it as an existential threat." Ambassador Krelak scoffed. "No aggressive moves." It appeared out of nowhere. It violated every known principle of space travel. What more provocation do we need? The debate raged, a cacophony of fear, logic, and raw survival instinct. Each species represented in the chamber saw the unknown vessel through the lens of their own survival. The silicon-based Orcs saw a potential weapon. The energy-dependent Nexians saw a technological anomaly. The militaristic Crescians saw a challenge to be neutralized. But beneath the panic, a more terrifying possibility began to emerge. What if this vessel wasn't a threat? What if it was something humanity had been trying to tell the galaxy for generations? Chief Analyst Wren's voice cut through the chaos. "We're missing something," he said quietly. "This isn't a weapon. This is a message." The room fell silent. The unknown vessel continued its silent drift, uncaring about the panic it had unleashed. Waiting, watching, challenging everything the Galactic Confederacy believed it knew about the universe. The diplomatic corvette ICS Harmony cut through the void like a precision instrument of peace. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the command deck, her dark eyes fixed on the impossible vessel that dominated their forward sensors. 17 years of diplomatic service hadn't prepared her for this moment. "Status report," she commanded, her voice calm despite the maelstrom of tension that filled the bridge. Lieutenant Amir Khan, her communications specialist, looked up from a console that was more advanced neural network than traditional computer. "All communication protocols are ready," he reported. "We're carrying translation matrices for over 3,000 known sentient languages, quantum encryption that would take a standard computer cluster a millennium to crack, and enough diplomatic credentials to negotiate with a black hole." The Harmony was the Confederacy's best hope. A vessel designed not just for communication, but for survival. Its hull incorporated adaptive technologies that made traditional weapons look like stone tools. Every system was a compromise between diplomatic sensitivity and raw, survival-driven engineering. "Approaching unknown vessel," the navigation AI reported. Its voice was a carefully modulated blend of professional detachment and underlying tension. "Quantum stabilizers at maximum. Defensive membranes are fully deployed." Rodriguez knew the stakes. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. This was humanity's first true reintroduction to a galactic community they'd been separated from for generations. Centuries of isolation, of survival on the razor's edge of impossible environments, had transformed humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. The unknown vessel grew larger on their displays. It wasn't just a ship. It was a statement, a technological marvel that seemed to bend the very rules of physics. Sensor readings fluctuated wildly. One moment, the ship appeared to be kilometers long. The next, it was compact enough to fit in a standard cargo bay. Its hull absorbed light, bent quantum fields, and seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Preparing primary communication burst, Amir announced. What happened next defied every protocol, every expectation. Before the Harmony could transmit a single byte of data, the unknown vessel unleashed a communication burst that crashed every single system within 3 light-years. Quantum communication networks, Ansible relays, deep space monitoring stations, planetary defense grids. Everything went dark. For 17 minutes, galactic communications died. When systems rebooted, only a single message remained. 6 words that would be remembered for generations. Transmission received. Do not interfere. Proceeding. The message carried no emotion, no threat, just a cold, absolute certainty that sent shivers through every listening species. On the bridge of the Harmony, Captain Rodriguez allowed herself a slight smile. This was humanity. Not a species of conquerors, not a civilization of warriors, but survivors, explorers, a people who had learned that the universe doesn't care about your intentions, only your ability to adapt and survive. Lieutenant Khan looked up, his hand still dancing across quantum communication interfaces. Captain, he said, a tremor of excitement in his voice. They're acknowledging our presence, but not in any way we expected. The unknown vessel began to move, not with thrust, not with any recognizable propulsion. It simply shifted, as if space itself was bending around its hull. Rodriguez gripped the command chair. Track it, she ordered. But do not, under any circumstances, attempt to interfere. The galaxy held its collective breath. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Lyra Voss's research lab looked more like a controlled chaos of technological nightmares than a scientific facility. Holographic displays twisted and warped around her, each one struggling to make sense of the impossible data streaming in from the mysterious human vessel. This isn't just advanced technology, she muttered, her cybernetic implants flickering with computational intensity. This is a complete reimagining of physical laws. The Confederacy's top research team had been working nonstop for 72 consecutive hours. Quantum physicists, xenotechnological experts, and computational theorists worked in a state of perpetual exhaustion and manic excitement. Every scan, every fragment of data from the human ship challenged everything they thought they knew about technology, physics, and the nature of space itself. Dr. Marcos Chen, a veteran xenotech researcher, pointed to a particularly bizarre energy reading. Look at this quantum entanglement signature, he said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and profound confusion. It's not just breaking our understanding of physics, it's rewriting the fundamental rules. The data told a story that was almost incomprehensible. The ship's hull wasn't just a protective barrier, it was a living, adaptive system that seemed to process information faster than the most advanced quantum computers in the Confederacy. Energy management wasn't about storage or conversion. It was about manipulation on a level that bordered on the magical. The computational density, Lyra whispered, it's beyond anything we've ever conceived. Preliminary analysis suggested the ship could process more information in a microsecond than the entire Confederacy's combined computational networks could manage in a standard galactic year. Its energy systems didn't just generate power, they seemed to draw energy directly from the quantum fabric of space-time itself. It's like the ship is thinking, Marcos noted, his hand tracing impossible mathematical patterns in the air. Not computing, thinking. The most disturbing revelations came from the ship's material composition. Traditional scanning methods were useless. The hull appeared to be a living matrix of nanostructured materials that could reconfigure themselves instantaneously. One moment, a section would be harder than the most advanced neutronium alloys. The next, it would become more flexible than organic tissue. Adaptive camouflage doesn't even begin to describe this, Lyra muttered. Deep in the analysis, they discovered something that sent chills through the entire research team. The ship wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a preservation vessel, genetic archives, cultural memories, terraforming technologies, medical breakthroughs that could resurrect entire extinct species. This wasn't a warship. This was a library, a seed of human civilization, carrying the accumulated knowledge of generations that had survived in the most hostile environments imaginable. They didn't just survive, Marcos said, his voice barely a whisper. They evolved. The research team worked in a state of perpetual awe. Each new discovery peeled back another layer of an impossible technological onion. The human vessel represented more than advanced engineering. It was a testament to a species that had learned to survive by becoming something beyond traditional understanding. As another wave of impossible data crashed through their systems, Dr. Lyra Voss realized something fundamental had changed. Humanity wasn't just returning to the galactic stage. They were rewriting the rules of existence itself. The Vornak battle fleet emerged from quantum space like a metallic plague. 50 warships, each a kilometer of weaponized hatred, their hull designs optimized for complete planetary destruction. Admiral Krasnak stood on the bridge of the flagship Annihilator, his 6 eyes scanning the tactical displays with predatory intensity. Confederacy is paralyzed, he growled to his tactical officer. This unknown vessel presents the perfect opportunity. We will strike before they can mount any defense. The Vornak were not a species that understood mercy. Conquest was their birthright. Destruction, their most sacred art form. They had carved their empire across 3 galactic quadrants, leaving nothing but ash and radiation in their wake. Entire civilizations had been reduced to molecular memories by their relentless war machine. The human vessel sat motionless. No shields, no visible weapon systems, nothing to suggest it could withstand the incoming storm of destruction. Targeting solutions locked. The Vornak tactical systems chirped. A computational symphony of death prepared to unleash its full potential. Admiral Krasnak allowed himself a moment of anticipated triumph. Fire primary gravitational disruptors, he commanded. What happened next would be studied for generations. The first volley should have torn the human vessel into atomic fragments. Gravitational weapons capable of collapsing entire planetary cores erupted from the Vornak fleet. Each beam could reduce a standard battleship to less than plasma in microseconds. The beams simply disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed. They vanished as if they had never existed. Impossible, the tactical officer whispered. The human vessel hadn't moved, hadn't raised a shield, hadn't fired a single defensive shot. It had simply negated 50 of the most destructive weapon strikes in known space. Confusion turned to terror as the Vornak realized something fundamental had changed. The human ship began to move. Not with thrust, not with any recognizable propulsion. It simply existed in one location, and then another. Vornak ships began to experience system failures. Computational networks crashed. Weapon systems turned themselves off. Life's support began to fluctuate. Admiral Krasnak watched in horror as his fleet, 50 of the most advanced warships in the Vornak arsenal, began to come apart at the molecular level. Ships didn't explode. They didn't dramatically burst into flame. They simply disassembled. Molecular bonds disrupted. Systems gently falling apart like complex puzzles losing their structural integrity. What are you? Krasnak screamed into the communication system. A single transmission came through. Cold, precise, emotionless. Defensive protocols activated. Threat neutralized. In 17 minutes, the entire Vornak battle fleet ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not defeated, simply removed. The human vessel continued its journey, uncaring about the cosmic violence it had just enacted. No celebration, no dramatic victory display, just cold, calculating efficiency. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something fundamental had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again. The transmission came without warning. Confederacy communication networks, still recovering from the earlier disruption, suddenly blazed with a data stream that defied every known protocol. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from the diplomatic corvette Harmony as the true mission of the mysterious vessel unfolded. "We are the seeding vessel Prometheus." The transmission began. Last of the colonial preservation missions. Objective: reconnection and restoration. The story was unlike anything the Galactic Confederacy had ever encountered. Generations ago, humanity had launched multiple colonial expeditions during a period of catastrophic solar instability. Entire populations were scattered across unknown regions of space, each colony a desperate attempt to ensure human survival. The Prometheus was more than a ship. It was a living archive. Genetic databases that could resurrect entire population lines. Cultural memories preserved at the quantum level. Terraforming technologies that could transform the most hostile planetary environments into living worlds. Medical archives that contained cures for diseases the Confederacy hadn't even discovered yet. We were not lost. The transmission continued. We were waiting, adapting, surviving. Each colonial group had faced unimaginable challenges. One settlement had survived on a planet with radiation levels that would have killed most known species within hours. Another had developed symbiotic relationships with silicon-based life forms, fundamentally altering their own genetic structure to survive. The genetic archives were a testament to human resilience. Modifications that allowed survival in environments ranging from methane-rich atmospheres to planets with gravity 4 times that of Earth. Biological adaptations that blurred the line between technology and living organism. Dr. Lyra Voss, watching from the research facility, could barely comprehend the data streaming in. "They didn't just survive," she whispered. "They evolved." The cultural archives were equally profound. Languages that had developed in isolation. Philosophical traditions born from generations of survival. Technological innovations that emerged from desperate necessity. Each colonial group was a unique experiment in human adaptation. "Our mission is simple," the Prometheus transmitted. Reconnection, preservation, restoration. It wasn't a military vessel. It wasn't a weapon of conquest. It was a seed, a carrier of human potential that had spent generations preparing to reunite the scattered fragments of human civilization. The terraforming technologies were perhaps the most shocking revelation. Techniques that could transform dead planets into living worlds in mere decades. Methods of atmospheric reconstruction that made the Confederacy's most advanced processes look like primitive guesswork. Medical archives contained treatments for genetic disorders, adaptive immune responses, and regenerative technologies that could regrow entire organ systems. Diseases that had decimated entire species could be eradicated with a single, carefully designed viral vector. "We are not conquerors," the transmission concluded. "We are survivors. We are reconnection." Captain Rodriguez understood then. This wasn't an invasion. This was a homecoming. The Prometheus continued its silent drift through space, a vessel of hope, a carrier of humanity's most profound potential, waiting, watching, ready to begin the process of reunification. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Confederacy's diplomatic chambers transformed into a crucible of raw tension. Representatives from 1,000 different species watched in stunned silence as the first official diplomatic transmission from the Prometheus was decoded. Ambassador Vorin, the Nexian representative known for his analytical precision, was the first to break the silence. "This is not a first contact scenario," he stated, his biomechanical eye-processing data at impossible speeds. "This is a reunion." The human vessel had begun a systematic process of diplomatic outreach that defied every known protocol. Instead of demanding territory or resources, the Prometheus offered something far more valuable: knowledge. Terraforming techniques that could resurrect dying worlds. Medical archives that could eliminate entire categories of genetic diseases. Cultural preservation technologies that could restore lost civilizations. Each offer was a carefully calibrated gift, designed not to overwhelm but to rebuild. Dr. Lyra Voss stood as a technical advisor, her cybernetic implants dancing with incoming data streams. They're not just sharing technology, she explained to the stunned diplomatic corps. They're offering a comprehensive restoration package for every species that wants to participate. The most shocking revelation came from the genetic archives. The Prometheus carried genetic samples and restoration protocols for species long thought extinct. Entire evolutionary lines could be reconstructed. Entire ecological systems could be rebuilt from quantum-preserved genetic memories. We do not seek conquest, the transmission continued. We seek connection, restoration, renewal. Each colonial group represented in the Prometheus's archives told a different story of survival. One settlement had developed symbiotic technologies with silicon-based life forms. Another had learned to manipulate quantum fields to survive on a planet with unpredictable gravitational fluctuations. Yet another had developed a form of collective consciousness to survive extreme environmental challenges. The diplomatic offers were precise, calculated. Each species would receive exactly what they needed to overcome their most significant challenges. For some, it was medical technologies. For others, terraforming techniques. For a few, entire cultural preservation systems that could restore lost historical knowledge. Ambassador Krelax of the Arxian delegation, known for his typically aggressive stance, found himself unusually quiet. "They're not asking for anything in return," he whispered, his crystalline body shifting in confusion. "Why?" The answer came embedded in the transmission. Survival. Connection. The fundamental drive that had pushed humanity through generations of isolation and adaptation. Captain Elena Rodriguez, serving as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, explained the core philosophy. "We were scattered," she told the assembled representatives. "Separated. Forced to adapt or die. Our survival wasn't about conquest. It was about connection." The Prometheus began targeting specific ecological and societal challenges for each species. A dying ocean world received comprehensive restoration protocols. A civilization struggling with genetic degradation was offered comprehensive medical archives. A species on the brink of ecological collapse was given terraforming technologies. It wasn't charity. It wasn't invasion. It was reconnection. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity presented its most profound gift. Not weapons, not conquest, but the accumulated knowledge of survival itself. Something fundamental had changed. The Galactic Confederacy was about to be reborn. The Prometheus continued its journey through the vast darkness of space, leaving behind a fundamental transformation of galactic civilization. What had begun as a moment of terror had become a renaissance of hope. On thousands of worlds, the first restoration protocols began to take effect. Dying ecosystems found themselves rejuvenated. Genetic diseases that had plagued entire species for millennia simply disappeared. Cultural archives restored lost histories, bridging generations of separation and conflict. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the diplomatic corvette Harmony, her eyes reflecting the holographic displays that tracked the Prometheus's ongoing mission. "We are not conquerors," she whispered, repeating the fundamental truth that had guided humanity's long isolation. Dr. Lyra Voss discovered something profound in the ongoing data analysis. The technologies shared by the Prometheus were not just gifts. They were invitations. Each restoration protocol, each medical breakthrough, each terraforming technique contained an underlying message of collaborative survival. The Galactic Confederacy began to understand the true nature of humanity's journey. Generations of isolation had not weakened humanity. They had transformed the species into something entirely new. Not a civilization of warriors, not a culture of conquerors, but survivors, adapters, a species that had learned to thrive by connecting, by understanding, by preserving. On the silicon world of Nexus Prime, entire ecosystems were restored using genetic archives from the Prometheus. The Arxian crystal colonies found treatments for genetic degradation that had threatened their entire species. Worlds once considered uninhabitable became living, breathing environments. Ambassador Vorin analyzed the deeper implications. This is not technology transfer, he explained to the Confederacy Council. This is a fundamental reimagining of civilizational survival. The most remarkable transformations happened at the cultural level. Lost languages were restored. Historical archives of species thought to be extinct were brought back to life. Collective memories that had been fragmented for millennia found themselves whole again. The Prometheus moved with a purpose beyond simple exploration. Each interaction was calculated. Each restoration was precise, a living testament to generations of survival and adaptation. We were never lost. The ship's transmissions continued to explain. We were preparing. Preparing for what? No one was entirely sure. But the galaxy had changed. The rules of survival, of interaction, of civilization itself were being rewritten. Captain Rodriguez understood the deeper truth. Humanity's long isolation had not been a weakness. It had been a crucible. A generation-spanning experiment in survival that had transformed the species into something beyond traditional understanding. The final transmission from the Prometheus carried a simple message, not a threat, not a promise of conquest, but an invitation. We are home, it said, and we are ready to reconnect. Across the galaxy, civilizations looked up, watched, understood that something fundamental had changed. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Prometheus continued its silent journey, a vessel of hope, a carrier of potential, a living testament to the most profound truth of existence. Survival is not about conquest. Survival is about connection.